Welcome to another edition of Writers Unscripted, curated by the Los Angeles Screenwriting Competition, just to give writers a sense of community as they go about writing their scripts and submitting them. For this year's screenwriting competition. My name is Will Dawson. Hopefully you've seen me before on this site. This is just another session that we're going to have. Last year, we came to you hot off the announcement of the strike, and we had a great conversation with two writers who were going through it and explained to us what it was all about. But now we are post-strike, and now we are ready to get back to work. And we have some working writers that we're going to talk to throughout the year. And this session, especially, we're going to have someone for you that I have known for over a decade. He is a spoken word poet is where I met him. He's also a filmmaker. He is a producer. He is a writer, of course. And he will be here today to talk about his process, talk about all the stuff he's done. I want to, before I read through his accolades, I want you to welcome and get that energy up for my friend, Chaz Jackson. Welcome, Chaz.
What up, Will? How you feeling?
Now, I wanted to see your face when I read all these accolades because I want you to really bask in the glow of everything that you've done so far, and then we could just talk about some of those things and also what you're doing and the things that you've been through, the journey that you're on. All right? Is that all right?
That's all right.
I want to make sure that I ask you this question first. Now, you are from the Bay Area. This is going to air later, but Bang Bang Niner Gang, all that good stuff. Okay. Now, you came to LA. You went to UCLA, writing for television, and then you moved to West Africa and wrote original content out there.
Yeah.
You've wrote for The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl with Issa Rae. You are a Napa Valley Writers Fiction Fellow and an official selection in New York Television Festival's first screen competition. You won a development deal from the competition with 1X Studios. You have also produced and co-hosted a comedic relationship podcast called Cake and Sausage. All right.
Yeah.
Which Blavity named one of the best Black sex podcasts you should be listening to. Recently, you were selected as a Disney Writers Fellow, and you are a staff writer on a show that my baby cousins watch, Grownish. All right. And you are a screenwriter on a scripted podcast that you sold to Audible. Man, the brother's making moves. This is all I'm saying. He's making moves. He's writing, producing with Broadway Video. And most recently, you were named by Coverfly a 2023 Next List for Screenwriters to Watch. Did I cover it all, sir?
And my mama loves me. That's it.
Okay. All right. Well, we're not going to dig too deep into your past because we want to talk about your writing and what you're doing. But just talk to me first of all about how it was to move from the Bay to LA for school and then for work.
The Bay Area is are we there? You still? Yeah. Okay. The Bay Area is such a creative melting pot. And growing up here, I knew I wrote, I did poetry, I wrote. Funny enough, I was winning poetry competitions for writing when I was in middle school and things like that. So I kind of always knew I wanted to write. I always did my homework in front of the TV. Mm-hmm. And so at some point I was like, well, somebody writes these shows that I like Buffy and Dawson's Creek and Living Single. And thought that could be a career and kind of looked into it and saw that LA was where I needed to be. So moving to LA was just the next step. It just made sense. Films weren't really I didn't really know any filmmakers when I was younger in the Bay Area. So it was just that's where I need to go. So it was kind of just I just saw The Wiz the other night. So I was just ease on down the road.
Now, as writing for television is what you studied at UCLA, not USC. I want to let people know that you were not in the hood. You were in the exclusive part of LA. All right. So while you were there at UCLA, writing for television, what can you take from that experience that helped you go further? Because if people are coming out of school, if they're taking writing in school, what do you think they should take from those courses and from that experience?
I did have a really good time at UCLA's Writing for Television program. Uh, two big things that I took away from that was my cohort. My cohort of writers, comedy writers that I was in the entire time I was there, we're still friends to this day. We went off and had our own writers group. We stayed friends through marriages, children, successes. They've been some of my biggest champions. They like first people to read, my work when I'm, writing a new project or whatnot, and just we just encourage each other. So that level of community is something that I think is like extremely useful and important because it's lonely. Being a writer sometimes it's lonely when you're sitting there, with that blank page by yourself. So that was the first thing. And another thing from UCLA that I took was one of my instructors when we were writing our original pilots said, I want you to write this pilot like you are specifically targeting a channel, whatever, write this as if you could see this on whatever channel or whatnot. And so when the semester was over, you meet one-on-one with your instructor. And I had written a pilot in this class. And when it was over, we met with the instructor one-on-one. I met with the instructor one-on-one. And he was like, I really could see this on FX. And that was exactly the channel that I had been aiming for. So that was like, I just like a huge smile across my face when it was like, okay. And this was before Atlanta was on FX. So just to think like, and they've gone off to do like great comedies now. So just to think that like I had crafted a piece of work so, so tight that it seemed like it could fall in line with this network was like a valuable tool that I hadn't heard or been taught or had learned prior to UCLA. So that was just a gem that I walked away from. And and that that pilot that I wrote at UCLA went on to win the New York Television Festival. So,
okay. Now we'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to go back a little bit because you said when you were growing up, doing your homework in front of TV, you were watching Buffy, Dawson's, and also Living Single. So that's a wide array. So what made you whittle it down to comedy when you went to UCLA?
I guess because I think I'm funny. I had and you had to choose. You had to choose. And so prior to that, what I had been focusing on was comedy. I had already written for The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl prior to going to UCLA, and so that was an amazing experience. And from that experience, I went on and did my own web series, and so it was just kind of thinking like, just in the choosing was like, I write both, but let me go this way. And so the funniest thing for me with that is we would meet up for drinks or little kickbacks or whatever with all of the UCLA students. And in my opinion, the drama writers were way funnier than the comedy writers. Like they would have us cracking up every time we got together. And so like it wasn't just me who would say that. We would get together and we'd be like, aren't they hilarious? Like, why are they writing drama? So
yeah, they gotta sharpen those other tools that they have.
Yeah.
Like so I'm allowed one DJ NV question. It's in my contract. Don't worry. So for those who don't know, tell everybody about the Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl and how you got into that.
Yeah, that was a life-changing experience, a great experience. I was home one day and on Twitter, and Vibe posted, it said, web series that you should be watching. And so this was in season 1 of Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl. They had 3 episodes. I saw it. I watched all 3. And I spent the rest of the day sending the link to all of my friends. And so probably by the end of the day, I had sent the link to like 60 of my friends on Twitter and tagged Issa, very spammy back then. And she just sent me a message and was like, thanks so much. I really appreciate it or whatnot. And I DM'd her and just said, well, I messaged her and said, hey, would it be okay if I sent you a spec? And she was like, cool. And so I sent what would have been like in my mind a potential episode 4 before episode 4 aired. And they were super in line with each other. What I emailed and what ended up, they had already shot and had already been written or whatever, were just like so close and so tight. Issa was like, if we end up having a season 2, I would love to have you come on. And luckily and thankfully, they partnered with Pharrell's production company, and I came on for season 2. So, The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl is Issa Rae's debut to the internet, where she starred and created and directed and wrote. It's just about her being a awkward Black girl, and it's been amazing to see everything that Issa's done since, and she's been a great friend and ally along the way.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely love that. And it took you so writers should know that you don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to support other writers, because you just know what can come from it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your award winning. What'd you say? New York Television
Festival.
Yes. Yeah. So tell us how that was for you, because a lot of people want to know what it means to win. So if that was your first win, so what? Talk about your emotions, your feelings, everything.
A friend, like I said, just sending your scripts to your circle, your family, like people who are, around you, your writers groups, people who can give you real support, like real feedback, honest feedback, other actors, other writers, comedians, whatever. And so I had sent this script to a homegirl who's an actress, a Broadway actress. And we were all coming up at the same time, and she emailed me and was like, "Hey, I think you should submit your script to the New York Television Festival this year. They're doing scripts instead of just accepting like web series and proof of concepts and things like that." And so I did, and I was having a terrible year that year. You submit your your to all these competitions in the beginning of the year, the spring, the winter, or whatever, and then you just let them go off into ether. And that year was a pretty crummy year for me. I'll say that. Like, it was like, I think by like July, I was like, well, this year's a wrap. Like, let's hang it up and like look forward to next year. And in August, I got an email from them saying that I had advanced and I had like moved on to the accepting or winning the competition. And the first thing I did was call up my friend who had told me to enter, and I was like, "Is this your festival? Like, did you pick me? Like, what?" I didn't think that I could have just sent this off and actually won on my own merit. I was like, "Are you a judge or something?" She was like, "No, what are you talking about?" Like, no. And so it honestly, I say that to say that like that was in August that I ended up finding out, and the festival was in, I think, December in New York. But my life just radically changed in that year from winning that competition, going to the New York Television Festival, meeting all of the other winners, the other people who would apply, people who had had come in like
placed,
who had placed. The execs. It was kind of like anybody who's been to a festival, and especially if it's your first festival, it feels like a Comic-Con or like a convention. It's just like, it was so many different people, and I had so many generals lined up that like I hadn't really taken real generals before that, maybe like one or two that, it's just kind of like on a whim or whatnot. And so like to have them lined up, like you have this, you have a schedule, you're going to, screenings, like, you're sitting on panels and listening to panels and meeting the other people who entered. It was just like really a whirlwind, and it felt really good. And so in that year, the New York Television Festival, they had other kind of like inner competitions. So the people who had won were allowed to pitch to like WeTV, TV One. There were a bunch of other different networks that were accepting, pitches or whatnot. And so I sent a bunch of them in to them or whatnot. And then I ended up winning a development deal with 1X Studios. And so it was honestly like just like surreal at that time. A few of my friends had come, so they were cheering and acting a fool. My friend Jessica, who told me to apply, she was there. So it felt really, really good. And that kind of just, from that point on, it was really like, there's no stopping me. Like, okay, if other people think that, my writing is good enough to win competitions, and I've worked with, Awkward Black Girl, I've gone to UCLA, like let's really try to put, my foot down and just move forward with it. And so that was like putting a battery in my back, really.
Okay. I want to go back because I want people to understand what you mean when you say these words. Tell everybody what a general is.
Oh, sure. A general is a meeting with a production company, a studio, a network, or executive, where they want to just sit down and talk to you, get to know you, generally get to know you, just kind of like get a feel for you, because you go into these meetings thinking like, oh, maybe I'm getting ready to sell this thing, but really what you're just doing is just like selling yourself, like letting Will know, letting the competition know, the executive know who Chaz is, who you are as a person, what interests you. Me saying like, I grew up doing my homework in front of TV. I watched these shows, and people being like, oh, well, that's a real, hodgepodge of shows. Like, this is who I am. This is what I'm passionate about. These are the kind of characters that I like to interact with. But besides really talking about like your writing, it is saying, I was a competitive spoken word artist. I've lived in Africa. I'm a teaching artist in the hood, just letting people know like, who you are, whatnot, because that could lead to, hey, we're getting ready to have this show, with college students. And I remember you specifically talked about being a resident advisor. We want you to come write for that show. Or, hey, a film is looking for somebody who can, partner with the author of this book, who, is a good fit. What about that guy, Chaz? I remember him saying, da, 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 da. And so that's what generals are. You're just going and being yourself. You're, telling some stories about yourself and then just putting it out there. And I've had generals where a year later it's turned into something, not right then at that moment, and sometimes right then in that moment. So those are what generals are. And the New York Television Festival set me up with some of my first ones.
All right. I don't want to lose this. I want to do one more thing, and then we're going to talk more. We got you. So what went into, or what goes into, a development deal?
Okay, so for this development deal, and all development deals are different. For this development deal that I had with 1X Studios, this was a very specific one. It was for a pilot presentation. So I got a deal with them to do a pilot presentation where it was like, okay, these are the parameters of kind of what we're looking for. You have free will to go off and create your own show that falls into these parameters. We're going to give you X amount of money and X amount of time to come back to us with a finished product. And from there, we will see if we want to move forward and make this into a, give this the green light to be a full series, give you more money to expand it, or have it go straight, into production.
So you get money to write a pilot, right? So they pay you and say, here you are. We'll set you up.
Yeah.
Let's see if you can do it, and let's see if we want it after you're done.
And it was such a small amount of money. It was so small. It was such a small amount of money. But again, these humble beginnings and these wins, these small wins, they add up. And for somebody who's just, blindly sending applications into, the atmosphere, hoping that something will come back, these wins are the things that have you be like, okay, keep going. Like, I'm doing something right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So with that, I created a pilot presentation, and I've still, the funny thing about it is I still use that as a proof of concept when sending it out to other companies, just as like, this is something that I've done.
Okay. Now, what was the pilot? What was it?
It was called Resourceful. It was unscripted. It was unscripted, and it was about pretty much about my friends in LA who were creatives in all kind of forms, who were doing a lot out of a little bit of money and being very, very resourceful with what they would do. And so the person I had in my pilot presentation was Jeremy McBride, the owner of Comfort LA, and just showing how he went from a small pop-up to the chain restaurants he has now. And, you know, he's done television and books and everything. And Comfort LA, you should eat there and check it out if ever you're in LA.
Listen, this ain't a commercial, but the fried chicken is amazing. I'm just gonna let y'all know that right now.
And he's an amazing guy, yeah. So it's just showing how the pilot presentation followed how he went from his pop-up to Comfort LA, his process, and how he just got real scrappy and real resourceful in the progression of that. Yeah.
And Jeremy, if you years ago online, he was with Will Catlett on That Guy. I mean, they did that thing on that
actor.
show.
He's an amazing. He's a hysterical actor, very, very talented. Yeah, and again, we're just all interconnected. You know what I mean? Like writing and wanting, you know, him to be in front of the camera, and then at the same time too, this is his other thing that he does that he's really passionate about. So yeah, we're repped by the same managers now. So at the time we weren't, but now we are. And so, yeah, like everything kind of just comes full circle.
I want to talk about your full circle because I feel like what we've gotten from this conversation so far is that you're not afraid to take chances. So you are going to make a way out of no way if you can do that. So let's talk a little bit about how you took a chance and you went to West Africa and started writing there. So what was that like?
Actually had my web series background is what got me there. So a friend messaged me and said, hey, you know, there's this telecommunications company in Cameroon, West Africa that are looking to do a web series. They asked me if I knew anybody who did web series. You had your own web series and you wrote an awkward Black girl. Would you be interested in like taking a meeting with them? And that ended up being life-changing. From, you know, just from having that under my belt, you know, those samples and those projects out online and existing, you know, for the internet to see and for the world to see or whatever, that ended up being like a resume, like a calling card that I was able to use and show as a proof of concept to this company. And again, I pitched, they told me roughly what their idea was. I pitched this thing, and before I knew it, I was living in Cameroon during the Ebola crisis, working in a country that I had, you know, working first of all on a continent that I had dreamed of, you know, traveling to, in a country that I had never been to, where half the country is French speaking, half the country is, you know, is English speaking. So just having this total like culture shock, but immersive, like beautiful experience while being at work. So it's like, I'm here to work, but this is amazing. Like, this is, you know, this is a like life-changing experience. And so we worked really hard on the music campaign that I worked on when I was there. But every morning I would just wake up before the city kind of really started to wake up and just like sit out on the balcony and just like watch, like as Douala woke up and just see like the streets going from like 2 cars in the morning and it being dark to like the sun rising. And then like, you know, the little kids started to go to school and then the workers starting to like come, and then the city to just wake up and buzz and just like experience all of that. And it's like, I prayed for times like this. I dreamt that this could happen, but never did I think that work would bring me here, or that, you know, that my talent, or that all of those years of hustling and, you know, writing web series, but working 2 and 3 jobs on the side, you know, would lead to something like that. So, great experience. One of the artists that I worked with ended up being on Beyonce's Black King after that, and I'm taking no credit for that whatsoever. But I feel like working with him and his music getting more exposure on the internet from that project is possibly how, you know, Beyonce found him. So it was just life-changing experience. And yeah, like and when we talk about generals and things like that, my experience in Cameroon, living in Cameroon now, like has just like made me a fuller person and leads to more things to talk about and more a different lens for me to offer up in, you know, writers' rooms or on projects. So yeah.
So we talked about what I was going to say before is that we talk about a journey from the Bay to LA. That's one thing, but
Yeah.
to go to a whole nother continent, was there any hesitation before you said let's do it?
Never. My family terrified. You know, what are you doing? And they've always known me to be wild and a risk taker. So I mean, they believed in me, and you know, we put God first. But I was like, I'm with it. Like, let's go. Now here's the thing. I say all that to say, I stepped off the plane in Cameroon, and the airport structure at the time, I don't know if it still is, but the airport structure was a complete cement building with no windows, slits that were this big as far that those were the windows. It was Africa hot, and that heat hit me, and I literally said, "What have I done?" I was like, I hadn't even stepped out of the airport, and I was like, "I think I made a huge mistake."
Oh,
And yeah, but no, that and just, I mean, just everything, learning different. So the thing is what's crazy, and for people to know too, is I worked on Awkward Black Girl half remote. I wrote on Awkward Black Girl in the Bay Area via Skype, like with Issa and Amy. And then in the summer, before we went into production, came out and spent the summer in LA while the episodes were in production. And so we were doing Skype before Zoom, you know, and the pandemic and any of those things, that even just like trying to make it work. And so I say that to say that with my Cameroon experience, I hired my entire crew off of WhatsApp and Facebook and Skype interviews.
yeah.
Like, I didn't know these people. Like, I had to have a team on the ground. And so here I am going from, you know, being a writer on a web series to creating my own web series to giving a little bit of money on one pilot project and development deal to a lot of money and a lot of responsibility and all these different hats. Like, here, hire a crew, go make it. We believe in you. And so that ended up being, just like I said, where it was like, okay, let me take off this hat and put this hat on. Let me take off my writer's hat, put my producer's hat on. Let me take off my producer's hat and put on my, you know, casting hat. And so that really stretched me. And I think that all writers should be willing and able to be flexible like that, because you're going to want to produce your own episodes. You're going to want to see that thing through. And so you've got to be, you just got to be, you've got to be willing to kind of like put your feet in the fire and say, like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm willing to learn. Can I shadow you? Can I, you know, like, doing your own thing before Hollywood says yes, I feel like and everybody's got, if you're going to film school, if you're, you know, working on a web series or a podcast or anything on your own, your TikToks, whatever, if you're doing those things before Hollywood says yes, then you're only gonna bring that much more experience into, you know, into the actual room, onto actual sets. And so it allows you to not be so wet behind the ears when you actually come into a situation. And so I super recommend it, highly recommend it.
I love that you had all that experience with Awkward Black World, also working in Africa, having to put your whole thing together from scratch. That to me, it prepared you for what you're doing now. I was going to ask you about being a poet because that's where we met when you were on the stage at Versus and Flow. But I'd rather get into some other things that you're doing, because I want to stay on that whole process train that we're on right now. So you got the Disney Writers Fellowship. So with all the experience that you had already, some people would say, oh, he doesn't need this fellowship. He's just, he's already in. So why is it important to still apply? Why is it important to still go through that process?
Almost all of my friends who I know who are working writers came in through a fellowship. And people would tell me that before I started to apply to the fellowships. And I was like, why? Like, I've done this, I've done this. All you got to do is just like be a real good assistant. And, somebody's going to choose you. Like, you're going to work your way up into that situation. And then I started applying to the fellowships and started getting those rejections. And then I would look at one year I got real like just discouraged. I had applied to a bunch of them and got a bunch of rejections. But I looked at like who the winners were and like what they had going on, and it was like, okay, they're doing a lot of stuff on their own. Like by the time they get chosen for these fellowships, their resumes look insane. So step your game up, Chaz. Like, okay, like go be a writer's PA, go be a writer's assistant, go be a showrunner's assistant, like do these things. And while you're doing that, continue to work on your own projects and, put out things so that when you win one of these competitions, you'll see, your resume will look just like these people. And that's exactly what I did. So I had been applying to the fellowships just as is, and not getting them and getting discouraged, but still applying because every year, like I said, my UCLA cohort and the rest of my friends are like, let's just keep doing it. Come, it's fellowship time. Come on, let's do it. Got your samples ready, got your pilots ready. And so did all of that as far as like assisting on scripted shows, being showrunners assistants or whatnot. And then the pandemic hit. And we all thought we were going home for like a month, real quick. And I was like, as the months started to go on and on and on, it was like, I don't have nothing to lose. Let me apply to this, this Disney Writers Fellowship. And I'm not giving this advice, what I'm about to say, but I'm just telling you who Chaz is as a people. I applied to a fellowship one time. If I don't get it, I'm like, oh, they don't want me. And I just applied to the next one and applied to the next one. So I had literally applied to every fellowship under the sun, not Disney, by the time I applied to Disney. And the only reason I applied to Disney the year I applied was because it was the first year that they were accepting 2 pilots instead of a spec and a pilot. So I was like, I'm over writing specs. I'm sick of writing. These shows get canceled too quick. You spend all this time writing the script and the show gets canceled and that spec, is just not, null and void. And so when my friend said, well, they're accepting 2 pilots, I was like, oh, I got 2 pilots. I could write this essay real quick. I could, like, okay. And they extended the deadline that year too in 2020. And I submitted real close to the edge, to the cutoff. And yeah, like some months later, I got the email saying that I had advanced to semifinalists. And then we did everything through Zoom that year. So normally you would do everything in person, go to the lot and do these interviews and, all these rounds or whatever, but we did everything through Zoom. And so it was a bunch of, what do I want to call them? Kind of like round robins of rapid fires of like interviews with different execs and questions and things they were throwing out to get to know you, but all the other applicants' boxes were there, and you were going on.
So everybody can see everybody.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We could all see each other's names, is writing each other's names down and stuff, trying to Google each other, after who's this person. Yeah, just a bunch of like breakout rooms or whatnot. And it's funny because I had a dream that I got it. I had a dream that I ended up getting the fellowship, that I got it.
Walk them dreams. Come on, let's go. I'm coming in here.
In the dream, I was home by myself. And over the entire pandemic, I was living with people. So I was like, I haven't been home by myself one day this year. Like, okay. And everyone left the house one day in December, and I'm home by myself washing dishes, and I get a phone call and they're like, hey Chaz, how you doing? I'm like, I'm good. Knowing who this is, I'm like, I'm good. They're like, oh, how was, Thanksgiving? I was like, it was cool. Like, what's up? At the small talk. What are you on my phone for? Like, I want to, congratulate you and accept you to the Disney Writers Fellowship. And I was home by myself when that happened. And so it was wild. But I also bring up that in those semifinals and finals and everything leading up to it, myself and a bunch of my cohort who the fellows of 2021, I'm sorry, we all thought like, oh, I'm not gonna get it because I was like too quiet during that. I didn't talk enough. I wasn't, whatever. And it's crazy just because like a lot of the applicants who like over talked didn't make it that year. And so I want people who are listening to this to know, like, trust your gut, like believe in yourself, because we were all thinking like, oh, we didn't get it. We didn't, we didn't do enough. We weren't too, super lively, but just like being yourself and like, staying in your power, in your pocket, like led to us, all getting chosen. And so, yeah, that's how I got staffed. And that situation, like the Disney Writers Fellowship, literally, I keep saying change the game. It was just, just another progression. But that is how I got staffed. And that go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I had been doing all of the other things trying to get staffed prior to this. And, none of those, I didn't get the golden ticket. No other way, right. This is what led me to getting on my first television show.
You got to keep going.
And so many other people I know, so many other friends were in the Nickelodeon Fellowship, the NBC Writers Program. And so the WB Fellowship. And so, so many of us, that's how we ended up getting our first staffing gig.
You got to keep going. That's what I got from that. Keep going.
Just keep swimming.
Yeah. Okay. So everything with that was through Zoom, but when you got staffed, was that in person or was that through Zoom as well?
So all of 2021, we were still all on Zoom. And yeah, I did my staffing interview on Zoom.
But I'm talking about when you actually were a writer on the show.
Okay, yeah. So Grownish, I ended up getting staffed on Grownish season 5. Amazing experience, and we met in person the first week, and then all of the rest of the other months we were on Zoom.
Wow.
All of the rest of the months we were on Zoom. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so I remember when you announced it, and I was like, "Oh, this guy he's doing big things." But since we're talking about process now, when you got your episode, let's talk about that process, because now you're hired, and they're trusting you to get a good 22 minutes out of you. So tell us about that process.
Yeah, I ended up writing the mid-season finale for Grownish season 5. I was super honored to be given that responsibility, that as a first episode. And yeah, so we had 18 episodes that season, so every writer receives an episode. And again, talking about your life or whatnot, all of these things led to this. So like I said, with Generals, where you're talking about your life and just sharing or whatnot, I was sharing like from some of my college experiences, some things that I had seen or witnessed that had gone on. And they're like, oh, this would be good for Junior. This is like a good, thing for him to have, leading up to the mid-season finale or whatnot. And you're just sharing when you're at the beginning of a show, a season, you're just throwing things out there, as a staff writer, you just want to, if you're on a comedy, give good jokes, give some, good stuff, and then just again sit back and just hope that you're adding to the big overall project and the overall picture. And so that's what I did with that idea of like, hey, this happened to me, and just sat back. And so it's like, okay, Chas, you're gonna write that episode. And so that's when you're in the driver's seat. So when it's other people's episodes, you are again adding to it because you want to help strengthen their episode and send them off to script with the strongest outlines and material that that they can have. And when it's your episode, you are saying, okay, like, how can we make A connect to B, and how can we do like this? And then they're just adding on to you. So So again, like I said, with my when I was in Cameroon, being in the driver's seat and having this hat on, was like, okay, now it's time for you to, make this happen. And we did that, and then you go off to script by yourself, and so you're at home writing your episode with all the notes you have, and just trying to take those bones and really put meat on it, really like bring that person to life, put air in those lungs, and just like make it a full body. And it's fun and it's nerve-wracking. You're by yourself, and so you've really got to be, I'm gonna say diligent, but you've really got to be your own boss when you're at home writing your own episode, because you got a week. You could, F around if you want to and wait for the last minute, or you can pace yourself, and know to give yourself breaks and give yourself grace. Like if you're bumping up against something. With me, what I learned at UCLA was like I'll write insert funny here and move on, and just like, okay, I can type something, and move on from that point, and not just get stuck somewhere or say like, I don't know what to do with this scene. But I can jump down to the next scene and then like, okay, that'll make sense of how I can come back and finish that. Or let me go outside and get some air, walk around the block, you know what I mean? Like, and then come back to it. And so that's what my process was like while I was writing my episode. And I was fortunate enough that for that episode, a lot of the old cast returned for that, so it was great. And then I got to produce my own episode after months of rewrites or whatnot, and getting it fine-tuned and then having all of the my showrunner allowed us to sit in all of the meetings, so the music meetings, the wardrobe, props. We sat in all of those meetings individually, so we'd pop out of the writer's room and pop into those meetings. And so just really learning how to produce an episode. And not a lot of times with streaming shows, you're not allowed that. So I was just really blessed and fortunate to be able to produce my own episode and see all of the things that it takes to go from page to set to real life.
Yeah. I love that. I love it. I've been listening to you, and everything that you've done has been a process, has been a journey, it's been steps. What I want to ask you about before we wrap up is, like, even from when you were in UCLA writing for television, the most important thing that writers are going to have to be able to accept is feedback, right? Because you write in your silos and you think this is going to kill, this is going to be it. But you have to be able to be open to it. Were you always open to feedback, or what helped you become more? I mean, of course, if you don't, then you're not going to advance. But what helped you accept it and take it in and use that feedback to your advantage?
So the Disney Fellowship taught me about superpowers. And so they would say, like, know what your superpower is when you're going into a room, like be able to identify what your superpower is and like own that and stand in that. And so to answer that question, my spoken word poetry background is what actually helped me with that. I came from slam poetry background, where I would compete competitively. I participated in competitive spoken word competitions where teams from different cities all over the United States would go to the National Poetry Slam and compete for the top spots. And so being on a team of 5 poets, we would take poems that we already had before we knew each other, and workshop them, create team pieces together, create new works, and your team would give you feedback every meeting, every time you guys met, and just, hey, I think this would strengthen this. Hey, I think you could take this out. Hey, I don't understand this. And it wasn't about like hurting your feelings or like knocking down your work. It was like, I want us to be the strongest team when we go off to this competition to, present Chaz and the rest of the team in our best light. And so I was a member of the Los Angeles Slam team, the Atlanta Slam team, and the San Francisco Slam team. And in the San Francisco Slam team, we placed 3rd in the nation out of 82 teams that year. And so I brought all that up to say that my superpower really is dialogue, because from being a spoken word poet, I really had to make sure that what I was writing would translate when I was performing that. And so I really like tap into how people talk. Like I don't write like like a novel. I write, the way that for my characters and dialogue, the way I hear people speaking. And like I've been a teaching artist. I hear how students speak and how they talk, in shorthand, and how, the things they say, and like people in slang and just different vernaculars, patois, and being in Cameroon, how people speak in, pidgin or whatnot. And, just all of those things, taking that and using that superpower in a room. And so when knowing that, like, okay, I can kill for dialogue, or a person would say this, or, maybe they might use this slang, these college students on Grownish might use these slang words or these terms. But if any writer on that show could give me any feedback and say, hey, I think this is going to help, because at the end of the day, we all want this show to succeed. We all are here on the same team, like a slam team, to, make this thing successful. And so just like I said, coming from spoken word poetry background allowed me to be able to take constructive criticism and know that this is for the greater good. And so I think that translated really well into being a writer in a room. And I know you said you didn't want to bring it up because it's like, oh, we don't want to veer off, but so many of my friends who I started doing spoken word poetry with are writers on shows now and are showrunners now. So a lot of us came up, the same steps.
I love it. I absolutely love it. We could talk to you all day. We're gonna wrap up now. Now I'm gonna call an audible, and I know Khalil's gonna kill me, but we're gonna do a separate section with you. Give you 5 questions. All right. So we're gonna give you some rapid fire questions that we could probably put that on the web. Cut this out, Khalil. We're gonna go back now. Thank you, Chaz, for joining us for Writers Unscripted. I thought this was an amazing conversation. It's great getting to know you. There's so much more that we could talk about, but this doesn't have to be the end. You could hook up with Chaz online. He's got all the socials as I am Chaz. And if you have any other questions for him, or if you're staffing, if you are staffing shows, please get in touch with Chaz through his socials and by his website at yayareaproduction.com. There you go. Chaz, it was amazing speaking with you today. You've given us a wealth of information, and I hope that everyone who is submitting scripts later in the year paid attention, because there's so many gems that he dropped. For the first submission period, please note that your first submission period is March 31st. All right, so this is well ahead of time. You got over a month to do it. So the regular deadline is March 31st. So just make sure that if you're submitting scripts, you do it before that deadline, and then you'll be good to go. But use some of the stuff that you learned today, and then you might be good to go. You just never know. A little something extra since we got Chaz here. Just 5 questions. We talked about rapid fire before, so here are 5 questions for Chaz. What is a word that you overuse when you're writing?
I guess I'm gonna say the word moves.
Say it again.
Moves. You said the word. Yeah, moves.
Okay. All right. Now, we talked about superpowers before, what yours would be as a writer, but if you had one superpower overall, what would it be?
Teleportation. Get me out of here.
What's something you wish you could spend more time on?
Stillness.
Say that again?
Stillness. Okay. Being still.
All right. I got 2 more questions. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Culinary.
Okay. You want to cook? You want to be Jeremy Part 2? The next Jeremy McBride?
Just for fun, just to know how to just sustain yourself and make good food. That's it. Nothing. Yeah. No other kind of aspirations. Just to sustain yourself and make good food for good people.
Okay. Final question for you. Who's your North Star? Who do you look to say that you're doing well? Who do you aspire to be the first Chaz like?
I aspire to be Chaz. Um, who my friends. When my friends are like, job well done, I'm proud of you, you did a good job. Those are the people that I like look for their just their words of affirmation, because we've been in the mud together. We came up out the mud together. So they know when Niecy Nash did that speech about, she knows the night she cried. She knows the nights, people who said no and that she couldn't do this or whatnot. My friends, my best friends are the ones who know how many things I got rejections from, how many times I've got knocked down and picked myself back up, how many small victories we celebrated together leading up to all of these things. So yeah.
Okay. From the Bay to UCLA to West Africa. Listen, my man has done a lot, and the best is yet to come. He's still got so far to go, and I love that you were able to take some time with us. Socials, I am Chaz, and yayareaproduction.com. Get in touch with Chaz, and we will have another episode of Writers Unscripted coming at you soon. You guys take care.